everybody, and welcome to GenFriends. I'm your host, Cheri Hudson Passey from Carolina Girl Genealogy, and the fabulous panel is back, and we have a special guest as well. So I would like to introduce you to all these people who need no introduction because you know them well. We've got Shelley Murphy, our family history girl. Hello.
Good evening, everybody. So glad to be here. And
did I say family tree girl? My family tree girls here, right? Yes. And we've got Mary Kircher Roddy from MKR Genealogy. Hello.
Hi there.
With her Ireland in the background, always making us jealous. We all wish we were there.
Yes.
And
all of us.
Yes. And on the road, we've got Laura Hedgecock from Treasure Chest of Memories. Hi, Laura.
Hi, I'm coming to you from Dr. Shelley Murphy's hometown.
That must be Grand Rapids, Michigan.
It is.
Fabulous. We're glad you took the time to hop in even when you're traveling. So that's great. Well, as you can see, we've got a very special guest, and she's been on before. We loved having her. We love having her on. This is I can't even talk. This is Diana Elgin, our friend. She is, you probably all know Diana. She is a speaker. She's a professional genealogist. She is an AG, so she's an accredited genealogist, and you probably all know her from her first book and her first study group that she put together, which was Research Like a Pro. And you've also got your blog, Family Locket, that you write, and you've got a whole group of genealogists that write with you. Your daughter, which I think is just fabulous, and some other people that write with you. But you've got a new book out, and we've been wanting to have you on. I don't know if people can see how this goes with your screen in the back, but it's called Research Like a Pro with DNA. Yeah, there you go. There we go.
Oh, mine.
Yeah, there you
go. There you go.
Exactly. Now, this book, you have a study group that goes with this book too, don't you?
We do. We just barely started.
Yeah.
Session 1 was this week. And
was it really?
And I need to get my assignment done because I do an assignment right along with the group.
Oh, I love that.
The study group projects is how I get my own research done.
Oh, hey, I like that.
You have that pressure every
Very
week to get an
smart.
assignment done. Yeah. So I made some good progress. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, as I look through the chapters, and I've got things marked, and because my DNA knowledge is not what I want it to be. It's just not. And I've taken class after class, and I like books like this because you go through the chapter and you do have homework at the end. So you're not just reading, you have to do something, at the end. You have to do something to help you learn it. And you've got chapters on things that other DNA books don't have. You talk about, it's the same really as regular research, analyzing, correlation, all those words that we know from regular, the methodologies and all those kind of things. And so I like that because it's showing people it's the same, it's a different skill set, but you still have to go through the same process. And I really, really like that because it's so true. And you've got a chapter on citing DNA, which, oh my goodness.
Yes,
citing in general is hard. Citing in general can be hard, let alone DNA, but you've got a way to walk through it and get it done, which I really like. So I'm just going to open it up to anybody for questions that you may have about the book. And Diana, anything you want to, Shelley, go ahead.
Well, I just want to commend her and the co-authors there in the book because chapter 4 was create a research objective.
Mm-hmm.
And why take a test if you don't know what you're trying to find? And we're not even going to get to once you get the results, because that's also explained. But again, I think a lot of folks, family historians, genealogists, and just like you said, Cheri, I've taken the classes and I've listened to them. I went through a series of classes, but it's still, if I don't set what that goal is and why I'm taking it,
yes,
I got a whole bunch of stuff that I don't know what to do with it. And then people are trying to link things. And my friend, and you guys know her too, Renata, in another little group that I'm in, she made such a profound statement last Friday because there was a lady who had some Renata Yarborough Sanders I'm talking about. And the lady was talking about her DNA and that she keeps looking for her family, this, that, and other, but she kept concentrating on surname.
Oh.
And Renata said, and there was about 50 of us in this group. And Renata says, but you have to understand, surnames didn't make babies. And everybody was stunned because she kept, and again, this is where, you know, things like the book and the worksheets, you got to understand, just because they got the same name, you know, doesn't mean that they're your relative.
Oh my God.
But
That
they
is
got the
such,
connection,
That's
but
a
she's
great
only
quote.
following surname. So again,
I
thank
love
you.
that.
Yeah, I
That's
just thought that
fun.
was a good
You can
scenario.
use that quote, Diana, in your study group.
Earl Sanders, you guys know her.
I do know Renata. That's awesome.
And she's
That is
out of North
awesome.
Carolina, but she was trying to communicate, you know, just the fact, don't just think about that. That's not what we're talking about here, is surnames, you know, and going through all of this, but they were still focused on the surname. They couldn't process it yet. It's going to take them some time. So I'd like the organization of the book. So, you know, definitely would recommend it. And again, take a test. Why are you taking a test? What are you hoping to find? You know, and again, I'm going to say it, not lessening the value, but the more simpler and clear that it is, the better I think it comes across. So I appreciate that. Also, as a reader, I can understand it, and there's science in there, but I got it, you know, and stuff. So, but anyway,
Thank
so
you.
I
Thank you,
appreciate
Shelley.
it.
Anybody else got a
Thank
question
you.
for Diana? I was going to ask you, if somebody is just starting out and they pick up this book, what is your advice for them? Just join the study group and just get going with it? Or, you know, what is your advice to a newbie who's just taken a test and really doesn't know what they're doing?
You can totally just get started with the book, and just like you were saying, each chapter has a task at the end, and you can just try out that task. One of the things that's fun is that we do have a whole series of podcasts, our Research Like a Pro Genealogy podcast that Nicole and I do. And we had Robin come on when we first developed this process. And so the three of us talk about each step. So if you are you're a learner and you like to listen to podcasts and get a little bit more, you could go find the podcast that goes with each chapter and listen, because that's great. And, you know, you have to have a little bit of background knowledge about DNA. So I would also recommend, and we do recommend in the book, we give you a list of books to go get, you know, Blaine Bettinger's Family Tree Guide. Get a basic book, and whether you read all the way through that, or if you just use it as, you know, kind of like your guide when you come to a chapter, you're like, okay, I need a little bit more background on this, then you can go look it up and read it and learn about it. Or, you know, you guys have all watched webinars, you've all done some different things, and so you have some background, right? So all that stuff is good to get some background. But honestly, I would love to hear from anybody that really didn't know much about DNA and just picked up the book and got started. That would be so fun. I would love to know how that, you know, how they did. Yeah. And we do have some people that do sign up. We have two things. We have a study group, which is pretty intense. We meet every week. You have peer group review. You know, you have to be committed for, you know, 12 to 13 weeks to do your work. But then we also just have an online course that's work as you go. And so you could take 1 month to do an entire assignment. So we have a lot of people that just want to do it on their own. So they sign up for the course, and then they get the same videos, because we do a video lesson for each one. And so they get the same videos, and then they have a little bit more time to work on their assignment. They can come to our monthly office hours and ask their question, their specific problem. We have a Facebook group if you purchase the book, and you can put your questions in there. So we try to give a lot of support. You know,
I like that, because people learn differently. You know, sometimes you get a book and you read a chapter and you think you've got it, but then you listen and oh my gosh, that makes a little bit more sense. Watch the you know, 2 or 3 different ways. It'll click somehow with one of those ways. So
Yeah. Well, and
yeah.
back to what you were saying about, somebody's brand new. Don't
Mhm.
pick it up and say, okay, I am going to solve my 7th great grandparent question, which is hard. If you can do that, it's going to take several phases of research projects to
Mhm.
get you there. Start out with something easy. Say, okay, I just want to verify my 2nd great grandfather. I've got the
Mhm.
paper trail. I just want to see if I can use DNA to also verify, because then
Oh,
you're
I
working with
gotcha.
matches that you're working with your
Oh,
first
that's a
and
good
second
idea.
cousins, and you get the hang of it.
That's great, Elise. I like that. Mary?
Yeah, I was just going to say, with, all the DNA classes that I've ever taken, I mean, I get it more if I try to work on a problem where I already know the answer. And then you understand what those puzzle pieces, how they fit together, and overlaid on the research that you know.
Yes.
If you just have the puzzle pieces and don't know what the picture is supposed to look like, it's much more confusing. But then when you recognize, the shapes of those puzzle pieces, it's like, well, that worked on, this problem that I knew,
Mhm.
then you can use it for another problem.
Yeah, that's a great
Yeah.
way of putting it. I love that. Yeah, because one of the things we do, it's chapter 2, we have you start using a charting program. So
Mhm.
you can use paper and pencil.
Yeah.
That's sometimes I just grab a piece of scratch paper and I start charting out some stuff. But if you want to get more formal, and we teach you how to do like Lucidchart or
Yeah.
diagrams.net,
I liked
some of
that.
those
Yeah.
neat programs that, the funny thing is I would hear about those. I'd go to these classes and I'd hear people talk about it, and it would just go over my head. I'm like, I don't know why you need to do that. And then when we finally started working with Robin and she taught us the value of that, I'm like, oh, I get it.
Mhm.
You can
Yeah.
change things around when you
Right.
when you have to change your hypothesis, you don't have to recreate the
Right.
will.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
And
that's
there's,
really fun.
yeah, there's so many of those different tools out there. It can be overwhelming. What works better? What should I use? What is this one
Yeah.
used for? So I like that you have the chapter on that to help people understand what they're used for and how
Yeah.
to get the best out of them, because it does. You go to a conference and they're doing, lucid chart. These people are doing whatever it may be, and you're,
Yeah.
I don't know what I should go to. Which one should I use? And who, do I go to Johnny Pearl's website, or do I go to, what do I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh,
I like that, to be able to explain it a little bit better about what these tools are, and you've got them all right there in one chapter instead of all over the place trying to figure out what everything is. So I
well,
like it.
and we do have a chapter on choosing tools. So I
Mhm.
think it was Shelley, you were saying, that we have you choose your objective. So you actually, have something you're trying to figure out rather than just helter skelter approach. But then you have to do a research plan. So it's
Yes,
just like
yes.
with regular genealogy, you can't just continue to rely on hints on ancestry. You got to actually make a plan and look for
Yeah.
some better records. And so it's the same thing with DNA. We have you experiment with some different tools and then make a plan. And your
Mhm.
plan doesn't mean use 10 different tools. It's maybe pick out 1 or 2 best tools that will get you closer
Right.
to your objective. So Laura, did you have something?
Yeah, I really have more of a comment because there's a lot of comparison to conferences. And I like the system you're offering, because when you go to a conference, you're going hour to hour learning a whole bunch of information. It's this fire hose. And it may be the only chance you get to hear that particular expert talk, but it's so hard to take in. So I like the idea of like you said, a second tool in the toolbox, that there's a book, that's step to step, there's study groups, etc. That it's a system
Mhm.
that it's just a different option. And for some people, it might be a better option. I know when I first started hearing, going at Roots Tech, and I'd see these graphs with triangulation, and my eyes would glaze over. I was like, I took a lot of genetics in college and stuff. I get all this, but why don't I get all this?
Exactly.
Yeah, you get it until you sit down at your computer and go, okay, now what do I do?
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
when the presenter's showing you, it makes perfect sense.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, well, I was really selfish about developing this process because I personally wanted a process. I'm a process girl. That's why I wrote Research Like a Pro.
Right.
And so when I was trying to find somebody to do the DNA part with me, and it's hard because all the DNA people are so busy with their own stuff, And Robin approached me at the Salt Lake Institute and she said, "Oh, I love Research Like a Pro. I love what you and Nicole are doing." And then she told me she was a DNA expert and a molecular biologist. I'm like, "Oh, would you maybe like to come work with us?" It just felt like the right person, the right time, the right fit. And so we spent a year meeting monthly, just getting this figured out, saying, okay, what are we going to do about locality? How does locality work into DNA? And came up with the idea that that's where you talk about ethnicity, and you do locality research because you're doing, when did two people, where did conception occur? Two people had to come together in a locality. So you have to think of locality.
Says that.
So, it was just so fun. And there were days that we tore our hair out going, okay, how are we going to teach this? How are we going to put this together? But when it all came together, and then we tested in a study group to see, okay, is it going to really work? Are we going to be able to take people all the way through a project? And that's always my test. And when they came through and they actually came out with, on the other side, with a research report with citations, it was awesome.
I have a question. So how much evolution of what you started with going into the study group, and then did you do how much refinement did you do after your beta test on your study groups?
One of the things we did was we moved source citations earlier. I really struggled with Research Like a Pro, where to put source citations. Where do you put them? I didn't want to put them too close at the beginning because I didn't want to scare people off. I wanted them to have the fun of doing a lot of other steps before they got to that. You guys get that, right?
Yeah.
But then we realized, okay,
Some
if
are
you're
still gonna skip it.
there you go. We just said, okay, let's put it with the timeline. You're doing your timeline as you're putting in your sources, just put in a simple source citation. So that was probably one of the major things that we moved that closer in rather than saving it to research logs, just because we thought, okay, let's just try it. And people so far have been okay. They've been okay with it. And the tools, we struggled with figuring out how to present the tools, because there's so many tools. And so we did divide that chapter up. So we have half the tools are more pedigree triangulation, and then the other half are more segment tools. And so we divided those so it would make sense to people. You don't need to go to segment tools if you can solve it with pedigree triangulation, just using trees to get to the common ancestor, that's okay. And if you want to go and do segments, if you can't get there with pedigrees, then go to segments. So that took some refining and figuring out how to not use the fire hose at our poor class members, giving them all the tools that they could use.
Exactly.
That's what looking at published articles involving DNA. So many of them are using that segment data, but sometimes it's hard to get that. I mean, if your matches are on ancestry, and we're never gonna get the segment data. But so the presentation of how to show it and explain it using just the trees, I think, is a real art, and I look forward to more people adopting that and seeing more of how they present the evidence.
Yeah, and it's been great because Nicole has taken a lot of Karen Stanbury's Institute courses on proof arguments and learning how to write proof. And Karen's such a pioneer in this.
Yes.
And so that has been really great because after you figure out something through DNA, and you want to get it published in a journal, you've got to learn how to write about it. And that's
right.
We just feel like we're filling a hole there too, teaching people how to write about DNA. So that's been fun.
And I apologize if you're hearing booming through my microphone. Apparently some of my neighbors are celebrating something and there's fireworks going on.
It's President's Day, right?
Yes, yes. And I don't
Okay.
know, maybe that's what they're celebrating or
I don't
birthday or
know.
something, but boom, boom, boom. That's all I can hear
I
right
have
now.
a question too.
Good, Shelley.
I have a question on the lines of following up what Cheri said. Now, say someone say they can't find a great grandfather, and they pretty much have the logic and the genealogy, and now DNA is coming into it because they can't find somebody. And I say great grandfather because that's a close relationship. So and you see all this stuff about haplogroups and stuff. Should people look at that and pay attention to that with location and stuff? Because you have a chapter, one of the chapter, you talked about location, and things, or looking at the matches. And so I'm just wondering, are people leaning one way when they should go another, or should they put all these different tools and ways to do things, or tactics or methods all together and work them all out? Or should they focus on one? Because that would be a male line,
Yeah.
and things like that. So I just want to make sure, that's clear, that if I communicate that to somebody, I'm one of those, when it comes to DNA, I don't want to tell somebody that's your bio daddy or that's your auntie or your mother, because I don't feel that I'm qualified. I tell them, go get a book, go look at these, seminars, or you need to hire somebody, and a lot of the science stuff, I think, scares some people because it's overwhelming and stuff. So again, the simpler it is for me, the more I can understand it. So looking like that for the tools, do you use all of them, or do you look at the examples that you provide and say, pick one? What would
Yeah.
be the best thing to go to get to methods or strategies regarding DNA?
Okay, great question. So we talk right at the beginning about, analyzing your pedigree, taking the test, what kind of tests you want to take, and talk about the Y DNA, what it can do for you, what mitochondrial DNA can do for you following the Y line. And so sometimes your objective that doesn't apply. But that said, if you are doing, let's say, an unknown grandfather, a great grandfather, if you can find a male to do the Y DNA test, then that can give you great clues. So we talk all the way through the book about how to use Y DNA and mitochondrial DNA and xDNA as part of your research plan if it's going to apply. So not every project will it work, or sometimes you don't have a candidate for testing. And so we have tried, most of the work is with autosomal DNA because that's what most people have available to them. But we also realize that, of course, you've got these other tests and you want to use them, and they can provide great, great knowledge. So another thing that you can do, and that I love, is that you can put all sorts of things in future research. When you've completed this project and you've got your research report written up, you can go and you can say, well, this is where I'm at. I need to find some more testers. Because you just don't have enough evidence. You can say, okay, I need to go, here are some descendants of this man. I need to find one of them to do a Y DNA test, or I need to find a closer generation to take the test. And so you don't have to feel like you can't do anything because you may not have the best DNA. Just work through the project, put all that in the future, figure out what you need to do, and then that's your next project.
Yeah, got it.
I like that.
And I think that's interesting because a lot of folks, when they step out, again, a big glaring thing is the ethnicity type things that they're looking at. But then when it comes down to trying to work through it, in my case, those things don't always work. You know what I mean? Because it's got so many mixtures and things like that. But knowing who to test to get where, and I think is important. And I think a lot of people don't know that. And that's where a
Yeah.
lot of questions come up. I
Absolutely.
immediately took two of my brothers and had them tested, and using in that example of the great grandfather. And I thought, okay, just in case one might have got a little bit more than the other one. And then I did the Y on the one brother. So haven't gotten any further than that
Perfect.
now, because now I got to go read that section of the book. Because now I got a Y line,
Yeah. Yeah.
and need to figure that out, from
Yeah.
there.
That's exciting. In all of our client work, because, I have a whole research team and we do a lot of client work. And so I always recommend we try to get the Y-DNA to go with autosomal, but I can't think of even one case that's been solved just with Y-DNA. It gives you
Really?
clues, but then you have to use that with autosomal and documentary evidence. And quite honestly, it is when you really dig into the documents, especially if we're talking 1800-ish and beyond, into the 1700s, the DNA is just not as useful. You
Yeah.
can still use it, but it gets harder and harder. And then the documents just become even more important. So, it's an adventure. You just don't know what you're going to find. It's really fun.
One of the things I really like that you talked about, to when you're charting your tree, to put the kids in birth order. And I don't know, I always start from the top and work down, and that's so not what you want to do in DNA. You want to really look for that youngest one. I have a problem I'm trying to solve on my husband's family, and there's a DNA match I'm trying to get the data from, but they are like the youngest son of the youngest daughter, and that person is entire generation higher than my mother-in-law and only about a year older than she is. So if those ones, if you can target those ones and shave off an entire generation, you'll have much better data. Yeah.
Those are absolutely gold. Well, I talk a lot about, if you guys listen to the podcast or read any of my stuff, I talk all the time about my Cynthia Dillard, trying to figure out who her father was. And I have a cousin, and he's getting up there in years, but he is 2 generations closer. He is her great grandson. And so I'm using his DNA, and he's got much different matches because he's just that much closer.
Yeah.
So that's turning out to be so valuable. So if you can find those golden test takers that are generationally closer, even though they're the same age, just like you, Mary, with your situation, that's really important. And so, one of my favorite tools, we'll see if she's back. One of my favorite tools for finding descendants is the Family Search Family Tree Descendancy View. So, I'll take an ancestor of someone, we're looking at, and then you can go to their tree and then do descendancy, and you can expand out 4 generations. And then you can look down and see who some possible test takers would be. So that's also a good way just to find people on your DNA match list, trying to figure out how they connect.
Yeah.
And what is the best approach that you would recommend or suggest when you approach people about taking a test? Sometimes the younger generation are more eager. Fine, you can do it because they're paying, someone else paying for it or whatever. But what is the best way, to approach people? And I've seen, people that send me requests and asked about this, that, and other. And it's like, tell me what you want to do. What are you doing? Just what is a good way that we could, and I could say professionally, talk to somebody in the family or approaching someone in the family that might be leery about it.
Yeah.
And again, the whole law enforcement thing that's going on and JEDMA, just again, what would you suggest that could be a comfortable way of approaching someone about taking a test? And I'm paying for it.
Right. Well, I think, above all, we just have to be completely honest with them and explain the ramifications. And I would just start with the most simple thing and say, I'm doing our family history and I'm really stuck. It would help so much. Your DNA is very valuable because you are the closer descendant of, generationally. And so you have better DNA than me. if you are, and so then I would say build that relationship slowly and then ask what questions they have. And they might say, oh, I've heard about people using, I don't want them to use my DNA to catch anybody in the family. That's a criminal. And then you could say, well, then we don't put it on GEDmatch or family tree DNA. We just keep
Right.
it on ancestry,
Right.
which is not used for law enforcement. And, you know, you just try to explain to them. And sometimes there are people that are just resistant and will not.
Yeah.
And you just accept that, you know, and
Yeah.
then look for somebody else that could help.
Yeah.
So
You
I know
mentioned- I
it's
do
tricky.
Oh, go
think
ahead, Shelley.
people struggle with that though.
They do.
You know, struggle. How's the best way to do it? Who do I contact? How many males do I need to test to try to find, say, a grandfather or somebody on that male line? You know, and I've heard that, you know, how many do I need to test? And of course, I'm trying to work up a line, and it's like, you need to hire a DNA person, you know, because I will come with my common sense, which might not be the correct route, but I might get my end result, but there might be a better method, you know. And again, we've all been to the seminars and things, so that's why I think having a book in hand is so
really
handy.
helps. Yeah.
Referring back, and you got your stickies and yours, you know, and things like that. So yeah, I think
You
that's
mentioned,
good.
sorry, Shelley, you mentioned ramifications. When people first start in your classes, in your study groups, y'all talk at the beginning about, you might find some things that you didn't want to know, you know. You take a DNA test and there's really no coming back from that. You can find, we've all found information that surprised us, and some surprises were bigger than others. And so, you know, do y'all talk about those type of things?
Well, generally the people that do our study group have been working in DNA for a bit. And so they kind of have wrapped their minds around DNA. They're like all of you. They've taken a lot of classes. They've worked through things. They just want to actually do a project and figure out a process. So they are not absolutely brand newbies by the time they come to us for either our course or for this generally. But that said, not the last study group, probably 2 study groups ago, one of my friends and colleagues was just doing the course just to learn, and discovered that her grandfather was not her grandfather, you know, so that was that was a shocking thing. And she told her dad, she said, Dad, and he's like, that's okay. My parents raised me. They are who, you know, I mean, he was totally fine with it, which is great.
Good.
But yeah, you do have to know that. So when you are asking somebody to test, it's always really good to say, we might discover something unusual. Do you want to know or not? Because then if they're like, no, I don't want to know anything, don't tell me, then you don't have to feel like you need to tell them.
That's a good point.
If you don't ask that question, then you're going to feel like you need to tell them.
Right.
So, you know, that informed consent. And I think Blaine Bettinger has a great form in this informed consent, so that they understand, and you can give that to them and discuss it. But I think it's just building a relationship with whoever you're asking to take the test.
Yeah.
Trying to.
Well, I think of Dr. Gates when he was interviewing Joe Madison, and Joe Madison is a radio person in Washington, D.C. And he found that the gentleman that raised Joe was not his biological father. And so what they did was stopped. He called him, and they stopped the filming and where they were going, because once they got to that part and said, you know, I need to walk you through this and this, that, and other. And so he brought it back up in the segment. But right then, you just clarified the same thing what they did. They just said, you know, I'm going to tell you that, you know, and stuff, but we're not doing it. And it was amazing because Joe Madison's, when he on TV, he says, well, then who is my father? If the man that raised me all my life, then who is my father? And then here's where the team, on the research and stuff. And of course, they went through the sons and things. And see, I love those stories like that. When they put all that together, and I like the genealogy side and then the support of the DNA. But again, I watch all of these programs, but when it comes into your own door, and I don't take clients anymore or anything like that, I'm just researching and they're begging for DNA. And
yeah, they are. That's why this book, these books are so good. And the study group sounds wonderful. How many people are in your study group at a time? How many do you take?
We take 40. We cap it at 40. So we do 20.
That's
we have,
big.
yeah, we do 2 groups. We do an afternoon. So 12 o'clock mountain time and then 6 o'clock mountain time. So we have afternoon and evening. And then we also we recognize the need to have smaller groups as well. So we divide them into peer groups of about 5 people, and we have a peer group leader for each 5 people. And those small peer groups meet on another day, and then they discuss their specific projects. And so they get to meet with somebody else to work through some specific things. And then we have our big group meetings on Wednesdays. So yeah, we do.
That's great. I like that. Because sometimes, you need to bounce those ideas off a smaller group. And I think that sometimes people are more willing to share at a smaller group like that, what they're
It's
doing.
harder to break
the
in.
learning levels too are
Yes.
different.
Mary,
Things come in at different times.
Yeah, and it's really great because some people are strong in documentary evidence, and then others are really strong in DNA. And so they all have their strengths and they can help each other.
That's great.
And then we do all of the assignments in Google Drive. And so then you go in and comment on each other's assignments. You're assigned 2 or 3 peers each assignment. And so you get feedback on your stuff, and somebody saying,
I would get, you really don't know what you're doing, do you?
No, you would say, you're doing great.
Oh, okay. I thought you had it. Okay. All right. Well, I'm sorry, Shelley.
Referenced it. I'm sorry, Cheri, go ahead.
That's fine. No. I was just going to ask if there's something about the class or the book or that you wanted to talk about that maybe we didn't ask. Is there anything you wanted to make sure was said?
I think you guys have asked great questions. I am just so tickled that we finally got it out. I mean, it's a labor of love. It's so much work to get out, and if you can imagine, but we are really thrilled to have it out. So I'd say just get the book, get started on it. If you feel like you need extra help, join the course or do this next study group. We do the study group in the spring. So this one's already going. So you have a whole year to feel like you can get some DNA under your belt, and then you could join us next year.
Well, we'll put links to everything in our chat too, so that everybody can get to the book and get to the study groups and get to you and your blog and all those kinds of things. So did anybody else have a question before we let Diana have her evening?
The fact that it's on track. It's the process, because I'm the same way, Diana. It's got to be in order for me. Step 1, step 2, step 3. And that's how I function my research as well, and what I started doing, and I'm putting this out there, I started tracking everywhere I look. I don't do the research log, but it is a research log.
That's your own research, yeah.
Yeah, it's just to be able to come up because, oh, wait, did I check that? Or wait, did I do that on the Murphy line or the Warden line or whatever? And I thought, I'm making my own checklist of what I've, gone through. And so I want to be able to check off the box and make sure that I check those things. Takes me a little longer, and
but you feel confident in what you're doing. And I think this is what this book is teaching us to do too, is step by step by step. This is how you do it. And
so good.
And I love that everybody's doing a research project through it. This is your assignment, get this part done and then see how you're doing and continue. So I like that concept.
The interaction.
I like the concept because even if you just want to do it through the book, you can hold yourself accountable and make sure you can get these, this homework done. So I like that.
Well, and our Facebook group, we have our Facebook group. And so you can upload your assignments there. A lot of times people just upload their
Really?
report.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
and they'll-
great.
They give me
Cool.
some feedback on this. We have a Facebook group just for our regular Research Like a Pro book and then for the new DNA one. So yeah, if you've purchased the books, you can be in that group and throw your questions in there, show people what you've done so you can get feedback on your assignment through that. So that's pretty fun.
Yeah, there's so many different ways. That's what I like about it is there's just not one way, because we talked about
Yeah.
before, we all learn differently. We all have different time constraints. You know, right now, there's no way I could sign up for a study group. I've got too many other things going on, but I could work through this book a little bit at a time on my own time and feel like I was making progress. And so I like that. And I have time to listen to a podcast, you know, as I go. But so there's different options. So I really, really like that you've spread it out into more than just, you know, buy my book. Look at all the other resources you have besides the book
too.
Yeah.
It's the support, and everybody's got a question.
Yeah,
Always.
everybody. Always,
They're
especially
gonna have a
DNA.
question somewhere through there. You're not putting it in front of Blaine or yourself. That, you know what I'm saying? We're gonna have questions.
For sure.
Stuff.
Yeah.
So
And
we
I
need
think-
answers.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important to know that we're all just learning. We're all figuring things out. And you can tell that because new tools are coming out. People are figuring out better ways to look at things. So it is a growing field. We're just all growing together and figuring out how best to use DNA.
I love it.
Now, does overseas folks, Great Britain and them, are they as high as our DNA? That, you know, numbers like ancestry. Does anyone know? I mean,
No,
does
they're
Great
not.
Britain have X amount of millions on the DNA or no?
No, their numbers are not as high.
I didn't think so. You know, just thinking.
Well, if you figure that so many people test just because they want to know their ethnicity,
Yeah.
and in America, it's such a melting pot that we do have so many, but in a place like England or Germany,
They
you're
wouldn't
probably
need it
English or
as
German.
Yeah.
We don't need the answer to that question.
You already know.
Oh, look, I'm English.
Exactly.
Yeah,
what
that
they
is a
tell me
great
I have
point.
too.
That's a great point. That's a great point. So Mary, Shelley, I have to go back really quick to your haplogroup thing though, where you were talking about, can that work? I just got Roberta Esses's new book on Native American
We're
DNA.
related. Roberta and I.
Yes, and she talks all about, that's such a great book, you know, trying to using the Y haplogroup and the mitochondrial haplogroup to see if you have Native American.
Oh,
That is
I just
one
got that in the mail.
sure
I'm gonna have
way.
to look
Yeah.
at it.
That
I'm
is
gonna
one sure
order
way.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
WikiTree, we both were guests on there, and
And you're
Mary
related.
too. All of us were.
All of us, yeah.
And Roberta and I, just before we went on, you know, she was right after me. We found out that we were connected, and it was on a European side, not on Native or African American side, but it was European side. And so we know it's going back a little bit, you know, and stuff, but it was so funny, you know, just learning and interacting with that. But yeah, I'm going to pick up her book, you know, because it might give me some other insight as well, you know, and things. So
Yeah, because I don't even know what percentage of my clients, but a lot of them have Native American ancestry or African American ancestry.
Well,
I
we've
mean,
been told that we
lots
do.
of that,
So that's
or we've
what-
been told, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're trying to trace that back, and yeah, you got to have the right test taker for that, because you got to figure out the right line, have them take a test, see if that comes up in their
Yeah.
their
is there an
haplogroup.
average for European? Well, don't say European, Shelley. You know how they put out that the average African American has 25% European DNA. What is it reverse?
I don't know if there is
I
a
haven't
number.
seen it.
I
So
doubt
I
there's
just
a
wondered
number.
that, because if the average is that 20 to 25, I hear it in a range, and I'm just wondering, what is it, the difference? What happens on, I'm going to say the white side, not necessarily the left side, but I'm talking about here in the
Yeah,
United
yeah.
States.
That would be a hard one
I
to
think it would be
Yeah.
hard to do.
generalize though, because so many people's backgrounds, I mean,
Super
white
varied.
and Swedish,
Yeah.
you probably got none, but
Yeah.
white and
But see, African
Long
Americans get that same thing. That's my point. I don't want to just use myself as an example, but in that mixture of the 25%, it's not all one.
No,
It could
Yeah.
be
it's
different.
not. Yeah.
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 Broken up just like everybody
Everybody
else's.
else's. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I'm following a German line, and I didn't realize it until I did a supplemental thing for DAR, and I thought, wait a minute, he's born in Germany. Wait, he's not Irish, he's not Scotland, who I know. Wait. And so of course I went right back. I went to Ancestry, I went to Family Tree DNA. I said, did I skip to German? Look, and it's like a fourth great grandfather.
Wow.
And then went to living DNA, because
Mhm.
they break it out a little differently. And I thought, oh my God, I just totally ignored that, but again, it was doing a DAR.
Mhm.
I didn't
It's
have
amazing. It's
DNA.
amazing what you find that you didn't even know was
I
included in your DNA. Yeah.
just went right
Yeah.
by me.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, oral
This has been
history.
really fun to talk to you, Diana. It's been so much fun. And I am going to start working through this book because I want to get better. I've got some very interesting questions that I have in my family line and some interesting family lore and stories that I want to see if I can prove or disprove. And I've been working on some of that and need some help into, how to go farther into it. So I'm looking forward to a little bit at a time
That is
working
great.
through the book.
Well, if you need to, you can just email me every month and tell me how you're doing.
Okay,
And I'll be your accountability partner.
Everybody in the world just heard that.
And that's my problem.
Only Cheri can email me every month.
Okay.
Exactly. You're going to be getting lots and lots and lots of emails.
Everybody can be in the Facebook group. I will go look at your progress there and give you a thumbs up.
Well, thank you so much for coming. And
Right.
This book is great. It's really great. It's one of those, as we talked about, tools that will help us, and it's not intimidating, and it's not, because I think sometimes there's wonderful DNA books out there, but sometimes they're not step by step, and they're, they can be intimidating for people that are just really trying to understand. And, you get through the first chapter and like, oh, I'm so not ready for this. But this book will help you get ready for that, right? So I appreciate you being here. And like I said, we'll have all the links to everything, and both the YouTube video on the YouTube channel and in the blog post. So whichever way you watch us, you'll find the links there. And so with that, we would like to say, see you next time, and thanks for watching. And we'd love to hear your comments too about, or any questions that you may have about what we've been talking about. So we will see you next time on GenFriends. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.